The autumn wind cut through the streets of Manhattan like a knife, carrying with it the scent of roasted chestnuts and the distant hum of yellow cabs. Emma Harris pulled her worn coat tighter around her shoulders as she walked past the gleaming windows of Fifth Avenue, her 6-year-old daughter Sophie clutching her hand. They shouldn't have been there. That part of the city wasn't for people like them, people who counted pennies at the grocery store and wore the same winter coat for 5 years straight. But Sophie had been so excited about the holiday window displays, and Emma couldn't bear to see disappointment in those bright blue eyes that reminded her so much of the man who had abandoned them 3 years ago. Sophie pressed her nose against the glass of Cartier, her breath fogging up the pristine surface. Inside, couples in expensive clothes browsed cases of jewelry that cost more than Emma made in a year working double shifts at the diner in Queens. Emma worked at Rosie's Diner on Junction Boulevard, a place where truck drivers and construction workers came for coffee that was always too hot and pancakes that were always too cold. She had been there since Sophie was 2, working split shifts that meant leaving before sunrise and coming home long after dinner. Her ex-boyfriend Marcus had promised her the world when she got pregnant. Instead, he left her with a 1-bedroom apartment in Astoria and a pile of unpaid bills. A man's voice pulled her from her thoughts. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with styled dark hair and a cashmere coat that probably cost more than her rent. He was on his phone, laughing about something, completely oblivious to the woman and child he nearly knocked over as he rushed past. Emma pulled Sophie back just in time. The man didn't even notice. He disappeared into the jewelry store, still talking loudly about some business deal. Through the window, Emma watched him approach the counter with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in his entire life. Sophie tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, can we go inside? Just to look?" Emma hesitated. The security guard at the door was already eyeing them with suspicion, his gaze traveling from her faded jeans to Sophie's sneakers that were one size too small because they couldn't afford new ones yet. But Sophie's face was so hopeful, so innocent. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that some places aren't for people like you? That the world is divided into those who belong and those who don't? Okay, baby, just for a minute. But we're only looking. The moment they stepped inside, Emma felt it. The weight of judgment, the sideways glances from the sales associates in their perfect suits and rehearsed smiles. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees, though the store was heated perfectly. A young saleswoman approached them, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Can I help you find something?" The question was polite, but the subtext was clear. "What are you doing here?" "We're just browsing," Emma said quietly, her cheeks flushing. Sophie had wandered to a display case, her face illuminated by the soft lights reflecting off rows of diamond rings. "Look, Mommy, they're so pretty." The man from outside was at the counter now, the same one who had nearly knocked them over. He was examining a ring, a massive diamond that caught the light and scattered it across the ceiling like stars. The sales associate attending him was practically glowing with attention. "This is from our heritage collection," the associate was saying. "For carats, platinum setting, internally flawless. $150,000. The man barely blinked. "I'll take it. And that bracelet. And those earrings she was looking at last week." Behind him, another man had entered the store. He was different from everyone else there. Older, maybe mid-40s, with salt and pepper hair and a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been made specifically for his body, which it probably had. He didn't browse. He didn't need to. He moved through the space like he owned it, his presence commanding attention without demanding it. Emma tried to steer Sophie toward the door, but her daughter had stopped in front of a particular ring. Not the biggest, not the flashiest, but something about it had caught her eye. It was simple, elegant, with a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones in a vintage setting. The sales associate who had greeted them noticed. "That's a beautiful choice," she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but appropriate for them. "That particular piece is from our estate collection. $65,000. Emma's stomach dropped. She hadn't even wanted to know the price. The young man at the counter had finished his transaction and turned around, nearly bumping into Emma again. This time he noticed her. His eyes traveled from her face to her daughter, then to the display case they were standing near, and a smirk spread across his face. Let me guess, he said loudly enough that several people turned to look. Window shopping. Emma felt her face burn. Come on, Sophie. We should go. But Sophie, oblivious to the tension, pointed at the vintage ring. Mommy, that one's so pretty. Like in the fairy tales. The man laughed, a sound that was more cruel than amused. Yeah, you like that one, kid? His eyes shifted to Emma, sizing her up with a look that made her skin crawl. Tell you what, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. If your mom can afford that ring, I'll marry her myself. Several people in the store heard it. Some looked away uncomfortably. Others barely hid their smirks. The sales associates stood frozen, unsure how to handle the situation. Emma's hands trembled. She had faced poverty. She had faced abandonment. She had faced judgment from family members who said she had ruined her life by having a baby out of wedlock. But this public humiliation, in front of her daughter, was something different entirely. Excuse me, she said quietly, trying to maintain her dignity. We were just leaving. The man wasn't done. He stepped closer, his voice dropping but still audible to those nearby. Come on, don't be embarrassed. We all know you came in here to look at things you could never have. It's like window shopping for a different life, right? I get it. But maybe next time, stick to stores more in your price range. Maybe Target has a jewelry section. Sophie's face had lost its excitement. She looked confused, sensing something was wrong but not understanding what. Mommy, why is he being mean? Emma's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. She picked up Sophie and turned toward the door, her heart pounding with humiliation and rage. That's when the other man spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. The kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to command attention. Excuse me, he said, addressing the young man. I couldn't help but overhear. You said if she could afford that ring, you'd marry her? The young man turned, irritation flashing across his face. Yeah, so? It was a joke, man. Relax. The older man didn't smile. He walked closer, his hands in his pockets, completely relaxed but somehow more intimidating than if he had been aggressive. I'm Vincent Romano, he said calmly. I don't believe we've met. The color drained slightly from the young man's face. Vincent Romano was a name that meant something in New York, though most people didn't speak it out loud. He owned half the real estate in Manhattan, had connections that ran deep into every sector of the city's power structure, and had a reputation for being fair but unforgiving. The young man stammered slightly. Chad Morrison. My father owns Morrison Investment Group. Vincent nodded slowly. I know your father. Good man. I wonder what he would think about his son humiliating a woman and child in public for entertainment. It was just a joke, Chad repeated, but his confidence had evaporated. Vincent turned to Emma, his expression softening. Ma'am, I apologize for his behavior. He gestured to the sales associate. Please show this lady the ring her daughter was admiring. The associate hurried to comply, unlocking the case and carefully removing the vintage ring. She placed it on a velvet tray, her hands shaking slightly. Vincent looked at Chad. You said if she could afford it, you'd marry her. Let's make sure she can afford it. He pulled out his wallet, extracting a black credit card. Put it on my account. The store went completely silent. Emma's voice came out barely above a whisper. Sir, I can't accept that. I don't even know you. Vincent's eyes were kind but firm. Consider it an investment in teaching young men manners. Besides, your daughter's right. It is a beautiful ring, like something from a fairy tale. Chad's face had gone from pale to red. This is insane. You're going to buy a $65,000 ring for a complete stranger just to make a point? Vincent turned to him with a look that made Chad take a step back. I've bought buildings for less important reasons. This young woman was minding her own business, sharing a moment with her daughter, and you decided to make her feel small to make yourself feel big. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. He turned back to the sales associate. Actually, I'd like to speak with the store manager. How much would it cost to buy every piece in this display case? The associate's eyes went wide. Sir, that would be over $800,000. Vincent didn't blink. And how much to buy the entire store? The store manager appeared within seconds, a polished woman in her 50s who had clearly been alerted to the situation. "Mr. Romano," she said, her voice professional but strained. "The store itself isn't for sale, but I'm authorized to offer you anything from our inventory." Vincent nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Chad's increasingly pale face. "Then let's start with everything in this case. And I want it delivered to this young lady's address by tomorrow morning." Emma found her voice, though it shook. "Sir, please. This is too much. I can't accept this." Vincent turned to her, and for the first time, she saw something beyond the intimidating presence. There was a sadness in his eyes, something deeply personal. "My daughter would have been about your little girl's age," he said quietly. "She passed away 4 years ago. Leukemia. My wife left me 6 months after the funeral. Said she couldn't look at me without remembering what we lost." The air in the store seemed to shift. Even Chad had the decency to look uncomfortable. Vincent continued, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "I built an empire, made more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and none of it mattered when I couldn't save her. I see you with your daughter, the way you protect her, the way you try to give her moments of magic even when life is hard, and I see what I lost. So no, this isn't charity. This is me remembering what actually matters." Sophie, still in Emma's arms, reached out and touched Vincent's hand. "I'm sorry about your little girl," she said with the pure empathy only children possess. "She's probably an angel now, watching over you." Vincent's composure cracked for just a moment. His eyes glistened, and he placed his hand gently over Sophie's small one. "Thank you, sweetheart. I believe she is." Emma felt tears streaming down her face now, but they were different than the tears of humiliation from moments before. She looked at this powerful man who had just revealed his deepest wound to a stranger, all to restore her dignity and teach someone else a lesson in humanity. The manager cleared her throat softly. "Mr. Romano, I'll have everything processed immediately. And sir," she turned to Chad, whose credit card transaction was still pending, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We reserve the right to refuse service, and your behavior has been unacceptable." Chad opened his mouth to protest, then thought better of it when he saw Vincent's expression. He grabbed his shopping bag and headed toward the door, but Vincent's voice stopped him. "One more thing," Vincent said. "I know your father. I'll be calling him tonight to discuss a business matter. I'm sure your name will come up in conversation." Chad's shoulders slumped, and he left without another word. Vincent turned back to Emma. "I didn't catch your name." "Emma," she said, still trying to process everything that had just happened. "Emma Harris. And this is Sophie." "Emma, I have a proposition for you. I own a restaurant group, among other businesses. My flagship location in Midtown needs a manager, someone who understands what real people want, what real service means. The pay is $90,000 a year, plus benefits and bonuses. Are you interested?" Emma's mind reeled. That was more than triple what she made at the diner. "But wait," she said. "You don't know anything about me. I'm just a waitress. I never even finished college." Vincent smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "You're raising a daughter on your own, working double shifts, and you still took time to show her the magic of Fifth Avenue window displays. You have more qualifications than most people with MBAs. The question is, are you willing to take a chance? If you're watching this and you believe in second chances, in kindness changing lives, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. Because Emma's story is just beginning, and what happens next will restore your faith in unexpected miracles." Emma looked at Sophie, whose eyes were wide with wonder at everything happening. She thought about the apartment in Astoria with the leaking faucet she couldn't afford to fix. She thought about the diner, the grease burns on her arms, the customers who left 50-cent tips on $20 checks. She thought about every time someone had looked at her the way Chad had, like she was less than human because she was poor. "Yes," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Yes, I'm interested." Vincent extended his hand. "Then consider this your official offer. Come by my office on Monday. We'll handle all the paperwork. And Emma," he added, his voice gentle, "bring Sophie. I have a feeling she's going to bring some much-needed light to my world." As they left the store an hour later, Sophie clutching a small bag with a silver bracelet Vincent had insisted on getting for her, Emma couldn't help but look back. Through the window, she saw Vincent speaking with the manager, his posture radiating authority and purpose. Monday morning arrived faster than Emma expected. She stood outside the Romano Tower on Park Avenue, a gleaming structure of glass and steel that seemed to touch the clouds. Sophie was at school, and Emma had borrowed a blazer from her neighbor Maria, who worked as a paralegal downtown. It didn't quite fit right, but it was better than anything she owned. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like ascending to another world. When the doors opened, she was greeted by a reception area that looked like something from a design magazine. Marble floors, contemporary art on the walls, and a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped off a runway. "Emma Harris for Mr. Romano," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. The receptionist's professional smile didn't waver. "Of course. He's expecting you. Third door on the left." Vincent's office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of Central Park. He was on the phone when she entered but gestured for her to sit. She noticed the photos on his desk, the only personal items in the otherwise minimalist space. A beautiful woman with kind eyes. A little girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile. He ended his call and turned to her. "Emma, I'm glad you came. I wasn't entirely sure you would. I almost didn't," she admitted. "Part of me thought maybe it was all a dream." Vincent pulled out a folder. "It wasn't. Here's the contract. 90,000 base salary, health insurance that covers you and Sophie completely, 4 weeks paid vacation, and a performance bonus structure that could add another 20,000 annually. The restaurant is called Meridian. You'd start as assistant manager for 3 months, then move into the manager position." Emma's hands trembled as she looked at the papers. "This is real. This is actually real." "There's one more thing," Vincent said. He slid another document across the desk. "I've been looking into your situation. Your ex-boyfriend, Marcus Chun, owes you 42,000 in back child support. My legal team has already filed the paperwork to garnish his wages. You should start seeing payments within 60 days. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "How did you—" "I have resources," Vincent said simply, "and I believe in using them to balance scales that have been tipped unfairly for too long." Over the next 3 months, Emma's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. She learned the restaurant business from the ground up, working alongside Vincent's head chef, sommelier, and existing management team. She discovered she had a natural talent for it, an ability to read customers, to create experiences, to manage staff with empathy while maintaining standards. Sophie thrived too. Vincent had enrolled her in an after-school program at one of the best private schools in Manhattan, covering the tuition anonymously through a scholarship fund. Emma had protested at first, but Vincent had been firm. "Your daughter deserves opportunities. Let her have them." But it wasn't just about the money or the job. Vincent had become something unexpected, a mentor and friend. They had dinner once a week, sometimes with Sophie, sometimes just the two of them, talking about business, life, and loss. He told her about his daughter Isabella, how she had loved art and wanted to be a painter, how his wife Rachel hadn't been able to forgive him for being unable to save their child, even though logically she knew it wasn't his fault. Emma told him about Marcus, how he had been charming at first, full of promises about the future, how those promises had evaporated the moment the pregnancy test came back positive, how she had felt so stupid for believing him, for trusting that someone could actually love her. "You weren't stupid," Vincent had said quietly. "You were hopeful. There's a difference." One evening in late January, Vincent called Emma into his office. There was something different about him, a tension she hadn't seen before. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to hear me out before you respond." Emma's heart raced. "Okay. The jewelry store, Cartier. The one where we met. I bought it. The whole company, actually. The acquisition went through last week." Emma stared at him. "You bought Cartier? The entire company?" Vincent nodded. "I've been working on it since that day. And I had the manager pull the security footage from that afternoon. I found Chad Morrison, got his contact information, and invited him to a business meeting. He showed up thinking it was about some investment opportunity. Instead, I showed him the footage. Made him watch himself humiliate you and Sophie. Then I told him about everything you've accomplished in 3 months. How you've increased revenue at Meridian by 18%. How your staff loyalty scores are the highest in our entire restaurant group. How you've proven that character and work ethic matter more than privilege and pedigree. What did he say? Emma asked. Vincent's expression was grim. He tried to apologize, said he was drunk that day, that he's not usually like that. I told him I didn't care about his excuses. Then I informed him that his father's investment group had been trying to partner with my real estate division for 2 years. The deal was worth about $200 million. Vincent continued, his voice cold in a way Emma had never heard before. I told him the deal was off. Permanently. I don't do business with people who raise children to believe cruelty is entertainment. Emma sat back in her chair, processing the magnitude of what he had done. You cost his family $200 million because of what he did to me. Vincent's expression softened slightly. I cost his family nothing. He cost them everything. Actions have consequences, Emma. The world lets people like Chad get away with treating others as less than human because nobody holds them accountable. His father called me 6 times yesterday, begging me to reconsider. I told him the only way I'd even think about it was if Chad came to you in person and apologized sincerely. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Vincent's assistant poked her head in. Mr. Morrison is here. Emma's stomach tightened. You invited him here? Vincent stood. I told him if he wanted any chance of salvaging his family's business relationship, he needed to face what he did. You don't have to see him if you don't want to, but I thought you might want the opportunity to look him in the eye while he apologizes. Emma thought about that day in the jewelry store, the burning shame, Sophie's confused face. She thought about all the times in her life she had been made to feel small, invisible, worthless. And she thought about who she was now, 3 months later, managing a Michelin-starred restaurant, providing a good life for her daughter, standing in a corner office overlooking Manhattan. Send him in, she said. Chad Morrison looked different than he had that autumn day. His confidence was gone, replaced by visible discomfort. His eyes darted between Emma and Vincent, settling nervously on the floor. Ms. Harris, he began, his voice strained. I owe you an apology. What I said that day, how I treated you and your daughter, it was inexcusable. I was arrogant, cruel, and completely out of line. Emma stood, crossing her arms. You embarrassed me in front of my 6-year-old daughter. You made her think that people like us don't belong in certain places. You tried to crush my dignity for your own amusement. Chad flinched. I know. There's no excuse for it. I've thought about that day every single day since. My father made me watch the security footage 20 times. Made me see myself the way others saw me. I was raised with privilege, and I used it as a weapon instead of a responsibility. Emma studied his face, looking for sincerity. She found it, mixed with genuine shame. Here's the thing, Chad. Your apology doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't undo the damage. But I'm going to accept it anyway. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve to let go of that anger. She stepped closer, her voice firm. But let me be clear. If you ever treat another human being the way you treated me, if I ever hear that you've used your privilege to make someone feel less than, I will make it my personal mission to ensure you face consequences. Do you understand? Chad nodded vigorously. I understand. And for what it's worth, you've accomplished more in 3 months than I have in my entire life. You earned everything you have. I was born into everything I have. I'm sorry I couldn't see that difference. Vincent spoke up. The deal with your father's firm is still off. But I'm going to give you an opportunity, Chad. I'm opening a new restaurant in Brooklyn. Working-class neighborhood, affordable prices, community-focused. You're going to work there as a server for 6 months, minimum wage plus tips. You're going to learn what it's like to depend on the generosity of strangers. You're going to learn humility the hard way. Chad's eyes widened. You want me to be a waiter? Vincent's expression was steel. I want you to be a human being who understands what real work is. You do this, complete the 6 months with good performance reviews from the staff and customers, and I'll reconsider the business deal with your father. You refuse, And you can explain to him why his company lost $200 million because his son couldn't handle being a server for half a year. The choice was clear. Chad swallowed hard. When do I start? Next Monday, 6 in the morning. Emma will be overseeing the training program for that location. You'll report directly to her. Emma felt a surge of satisfaction. She would be fair, professional, but she would also make sure Chad understood exactly what it meant to work hard, to earn respect, to treat every customer with dignity regardless of what they wore or how much money they had. After Chad left, Vincent turned to Emma. Too harsh? She shook her head. No, it's exactly what he needs. And honestly, it's what I needed too. Closure. The chance to face him not as a victim, but as someone who has power now. Vincent smiled. You always had power, Emma. You just didn't have the platform to use it. Now you do. 2 years later, Emma stood in the kitchen of Meridian during the lunch rush, watching her team move with the precision of a well-conducted orchestra. The restaurant had just received its second Michelin star, a rare achievement that had been featured in the New York Times. The article had mentioned her by name, calling her one of the most innovative restaurant managers in the city. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie's school. Your daughter's art piece won first place in the citywide competition. She wants you to come see it before the ceremony tonight. Emma smiled, remembering how Vincent had enrolled Sophie in art classes after learning about his daughter Isabella's love for painting. Sophie had discovered a talent she never knew she had. And now, at 8 years old, her paintings were being recognized across the city. She found Vincent in his usual corner table, reviewing reports on his tablet. He looked up as she approached, and the warmth in his eyes was something that had become familiar over the past 2 years. Something that had slowly shifted from mentorship to friendship to something neither of them had been looking for but both had found. Sophie won, Emma said, sliding into the seat across from him. First place. Vincent's face lit up with genuine pride. Of course she did. That kid has more talent in her little finger than most adults have in their entire bodies. What time is the ceremony? 7. She specifically requested that you be there. Something had changed between Vincent and Sophie too. He had become the father figure she had never had, showing up to school plays, helping with homework, teaching her about business and art and life. And slowly, carefully, Vincent had begun to heal. The grief would never fully disappear, but loving Sophie, being part of her life, had given him a purpose beyond building empires. There's something I need to tell you, Vincent said, setting down his tablet. I've been thinking about this for months, trying to find the right time, the right words. Emma's heart quickened. Okay, that day in the jewelry store when I saw you with Sophie, something in me woke up. Something I thought had died with Isabella. You reminded me that life continues, that there's still beauty and meaning and connection worth fighting for. These past 2 years, watching you grow, watching Sophie thrive, being part of your lives, it's been the greatest gift I could have asked for. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I'm not good with speeches, Emma. I'm better with actions. But I need you to know that I love you. I love Sophie. I love the life we've built together, even though we've been too cautious to call it what it is. Emma felt tears welling up. I love you too, she whispered. I have for a while now, but I was scared. Scared that it was too good to be true, that I would wake up and it would all disappear. Vincent stood, moving to kneel beside her chair. He pulled out a small box and Emma's breath caught. Inside was the vintage ring from that day 2 years ago, the one Sophie had admired, the one that had started everything. I bought this that day, Vincent said softly. I had them hold it separate from everything else. I've been carrying it around for 6 months, waiting for the right moment. Emma Harris, would you marry me? Not because of some cruel joke from a spoiled kid, but because I can't imagine spending the rest of my life with anyone else. Emma looked at the ring, then at Vincent's face, then at the restaurant around them, the life she had built from nothing, the future that had seemed impossible 2 years ago. She thought about Sophie, about the family they had become, about second chances and unexpected miracles. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, absolutely yes. Vincent slipped the ring on her finger, and the kitchen staff, who had been pretending not to watch, erupted in applause. The sous chef popped a bottle of champagne. The sommelier started crying. Even the dishwashers came out to congratulate them. That evening, at Sophie's art ceremony, Emma stood between Vincent and her daughter, looking at the painting that had won first place. It showed three figures, a woman, a man, and a child, standing in front of a jewelry store window. The woman was holding the child's hand. The man was holding a ring. And above them, painted in soft, ethereal strokes, was an angel with dark curls, smiling down at them. "That's Isabella," Sophie explained to the crowd during her acceptance speech. "Mr. Vincent's daughter. She brought my mom and Mr. Vincent together. She's our guardian angel." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. 6 months later, Emma and Vincent were married in a small ceremony in Central Park, with Sophie as the flower girl. Chad Morrison, who had completed his 6-month training and had actually become a decent human being in the process, sent a gift with a note. "Thank you for teaching me what really matters." Marcus, Emma's ex, had started paying child support and had asked to see Sophie. Emma had agreed, not because he deserved it, but because Sophie deserved the chance to know her biological father, even if Vincent would always be her real dad. Emma's restaurant group had expanded to 5 locations across New York. She had started a nonprofit that provided job training for single mothers, helping them build careers in the hospitality industry. Hundreds of women had gone through the program, finding not just jobs but dignity, purpose, and hope. And every year, on the anniversary of that autumn day, Emma and Vincent returned to Cartier, now under Vincent's ownership, and they bought a piece of jewelry to donate to their nonprofit scholarship fund. Each piece came with a note, "For someone who deserves to dream bigger than their circumstances." Thank you so much for watching this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, please hit that like button and leave a comment telling us what part resonated with you most. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories about hope, second chances, and the power of human kindness. And if you have a story suggestion or a theme you'd like us to explore, drop it in the comments below. Your engagement helps us create more content that matters. Remember, sometimes the worst moments of our lives are just the beginning of our greatest chapters. Until next time, keep believing in miracles.